Welcome, everyone, to Beyond Surviving, the safe space for survivors of childhood sexual abuse to receive support, resources, and share their stories. Beyond Surviving is about freedom, healing, connection, and even laughter and fun. Most importantly, it's about letting go of the pain of abuse and finally moving on. I'm Rachel Grant, and for those of you who don't yet know me, I've been a sexual abuse recovery coach since 2007 and am the author of Beyond Surviving, the final stage of recovery from sexual abuse. You can learn more about me and the Beyond Surviving program at rachelgrantcoaching.com. Now, today, folks, I'm so very excited to have here with me my guest, Frances Goodall. She is going to be sharing with us about the power of healing trauma and illness in community. And I'm very excited to be exploring this topic because I know for so many of you listening, you have trauma symptoms and you're also dealing with other things like illness, chronic fatigue, these sorts of things, which are trickle-down effects of abuse. And we're going to get into that and talk about that here today. Now, Frances is a therapist, coach, trainer, speaker, mother, and author of the You Can Heal Chronic Illness, The Lotus Process, 8 Steps to Health and Happiness. Over 5 years, she went from housebound with chronic fatigue to running half marathons, and she's since spent a decade dedicating her life to supporting hundreds of women to recover their health. Frances is a master emotional freedom technique trainer, an advanced practitioner, a Gupta amygdala retraining coach, and a health recovery coach. So you can learn more about Frances and all of the amazing work that she does at francesgoodall.com, and that link will be here in our show notes, so you can easily go there and connect with her. So, Frances, I am so excited for you to be here with us today. Welcome, welcome.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm excited to be here too. Thank you for having me.
So when we first got connected, I was immediately excited because I know based on, evidence and data and research like the ACE study, the Adverse Childhood Experiences study conducted by Vincent Felitti, that there is a strong correlation between abuse, trauma symptoms, and illness, particularly chronic illness. And so I want to hear a little bit about what led you to do the work that you do today. That's so very important in addressing this other side of healing that many survivors of trauma are going to be facing.
Absolutely, yeah. Thanks for that, Rachel. So, yeah. Well, as I think you said in my intro, really, but I had chronic fatigue syndrome from age 19 to 24. I've been fully well for over 12 years now. But yeah, I suddenly was sort of pulled out of my life at university and doing my studies into sort of a world of being too unwell to leave the house and that kind of thing, which initially, I just thought was entirely physical, but I had no idea why I was so unwell and what was causing the fatigue and the headaches and the weakness and all these symptoms I was getting that caused me to leave my degree and to be back at home with my mom and to spend 5 years essentially being unwell. But it was a very up and down journey for me of gradually getting my health back. And I explored many different tools and techniques to sort of gradually learn that a lot of my symptoms were to do with chronic stress and ultimately to do with trauma as well. And to gradually sort of peel back the layers of what was going on, what was perpetuating the illness, what led to the illness and that sort of thing, and working through all those different layers to gradually get my energy and health back, and then to be able to eventually learn to sustain it as well. Because there were certain patterns of behavior that I was in that as soon as I got a bit better, I'd be like try and be superwoman again, or like go back into sort of achiever or helping others or avoiding conflict, and all these different patterns I had that sort of meant that I kept getting ill again for a while before I learned to sustain my health again. And then that just really inspired my work, helping other people on a similar kind of health journey and trauma healing journey, everything I do today.
Yeah. So I want to go back to that place of, those 5 years when life was in so many ways at a standstill for you, it sounds like. You're on a path, you're trucking along in your life, you're getting things done. And then I know for many of my clients who are dealing with chronic fatigue and other chronic illnesses, there's often this moment where it's like, okay, I just can't keep pushing anymore, right? Like there's just this breakdown or something happens where all of the health issues just kind of come forward. And it is, I think, I've never experienced that personally, but my sense of it is that it's very jarring. It's scary. It's like, oh my gosh, like what's happening to my life? And can you talk a little bit about being in that place for our listeners who might be there right now and are feeling scared or hopeless? What was that like for you? And what did you tap into that helped you kind of keep going and keep moving forward to find the resources and find the help that you needed to heal?
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, I mean, it was just to validate that it is a very scary experience to suddenly have your like sort of life, you're like the rug pulled out from under you. You think I thought I was sort of a healthy person, with a good social life and doing well at university, having, achieved well. I traveled the world before for a year before I got on well. I wasn't expecting that to happen. So I think that part in itself can become a little bit of a trauma in itself, like the
Mm,
symptoms developing, all the unknowns about why they're there, what do I do about it, and all the emotional effect of getting all these strange symptoms. It's really really difficult time. But I suppose what kept me kind of, well, I think initially I didn't really know what to do, and I just sort of started watching daytime television, wasn't really doing anything to get
sure,
well.
right? Check
But
out
then
time, right?
yeah,
Panhandle it. Yeah, feel that.
but
Yeah.
then once I started to sort of read about recovery stories, or I met someone who had got better from chronic fatigue syndrome, I started to think, well, if they can do it, I can do it too. What have they
Mhm.
done? What do I need to do? And I started reading inspiring stories, reading about healing yourself through yoga and meditation and different kind of things. And then gradually started to, have things to hold on to. I started doing a daily meditation
Yeah.
practice. I started doing a daily relaxation practice. And I would notice an effect on my physical symptoms, quite soon after doing them, that they just feel a little bit calmer, my system would feel better. So I had something to sort of hold on to keep practicing and believing that if I keep going on this path, that I'm going to unpick these different layers that are causing the illness,
Mhm.
and that I can get better. And I wouldn't always have that faith, but
Yeah,
the next thing would inspire me and that sort
to
of
keep
thing, so I
going.
kept going. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, one of the things that we notice, which honestly I think this is runs parallel with the process of healing from trauma, is you're making progress, things are getting better, and then something happens and like wham, you feel like you're kind of back at the beginning, which you never really are. You're never really all the way back at the beginning. But something happens where you lose your footing or you're having a bad day. And I know for a lot of survivors of abuse and trauma that takes a toll on our feelings of hope and our perseverance and our resilience. And, for me, in those moments where it would feel like I'm making progress, oh, now I'm not, it was really difficult some days to keep moving and to keep trying and to stay in it, if you will, and to not just say, well, to hell with it all and check out and give up. And when you had those moments of seeing, okay, I'm doing these things, it's making a difference, I'm feeling better, and then you'd have a day where all of that seemed to just kind of go away. What did you say to yourself, or what did you do in those moments to make it through those times?
Yeah, I would say I often went through a bit of a process. So like initially I'd give up, I'd go like, oh, I'm here again, it's helpless. I'm never going to get better. I'm always going to get ill again. I
Mm.
can't do this. And then I'd go through a process of learning to accept, okay, this is just where I am now. It's just another dip on the road to health. And it actually really helped when I saw a graph
Beautiful.
of the road to recovery from chronic fatigue. It's not like that, it is
Right,
like
not a
that.
straight line.
And
Yeah,
maybe
it's more
sometimes
like
really
up and
like that,
down.
yeah,
Uh-huh.
really up and down, to really understand that. And I found that the more I could just accept, okay, this is where I am now, or even like have a wave of grief about, oh no, I'm back here again, it would like something would release in me, and then I'd surrender, and then I'd start to pick up again. So it was kind of like a little journey I went on each time of like
Yeah.
resistance,
Yeah.
acceptance, surrender, and then
I love
felt
that.
yeah.
Resistance, acceptance, surrender. Yeah. So that's really, and then healing at the end, right? And
Yeah.
so I love that. And thank you so much for naming that. So for those of you who are listening, this is a really important piece to pay attention to. We're going to get into, what you can do and some of the steps of healing and these sorts of things. But one of the most critical things is in that process, knowing that there's going to be these ups and downs. And what you do in those dips is really critical, because that can be the place where you can get stuck and then just remain. And so use this process here, even of like, okay, like throw your temper tantrum about it. Like, it's really okay to like get upset and be scared and be feeling the way that you're feeling. Name that, acknowledge it, and then come into that place of like, okay, it's just how it is right now. It's not permanent. I'm still moving. I'm still heading in the direction that I want to go. And then come back into that place of, stress release and symptom, sorry, not symptoms, like strategy, right? Go back
Mm,
to your toolkit and what helps
mm,
you.
mm,
And so all of this added up, Frances, to inspiring you to writing this book and
mm,
sharing about your journey and what you learned, particularly around healing from chronic illness, because
mm,
this often is a thing where people feel like it's a lifelong sentence. It's just how it's going to be. There's no way out of this. And in this process of writing the book, you came to these steps.
mm,
A process for
mm.
healing, and I'd love for you to break that down. What did you discover?
Yeah, great. Well, so about this 8-step process of what's required, and it's not necessarily a linear process. You might go back a step and that sort of thing. But the first step is about the power of learning acceptance and surrender, the words I just used a moment ago, that we can't heal unless we first start to accept that this condition is here for now, for whatever reason, it's here for now. And if we just totally resist that, then we're creating more stress. So the more we can just accept it's here for now, and maybe start to surrender and trust in something bigger, that we can heal, that we have that potential within us, we have that healing potential. So the first step is on acceptance and surrender, and the second step is on, but we can't just obviously just accept, because then we're not going to necessarily
Do
really commit to
anything.
healing. We can't just
That's
accept
right.
and just accept forever. So the next
That's
step is
right.
about the power of belief, and we have to
Mm,
believe we can heal, and we have to also commit to a process to healing and believe that it's working for us, and that is really powerful in itself, and to really get behind a system to heal ourselves, and a toolkit to heal ourselves, and
mm.
that kind of thing. And then the next step is around developing our self-care and our inner resources, and developing our routines in a way that really supports that. So that might look like having a daily meditation practice in the morning, maybe doing a little bit of movement in the morning too, and it might look like doing some relaxation in the afternoon, or yoga nidra, and it might look like regularly having a way that you reset your nervous system throughout the day, so regularly pausing and having mindful moments, or kind of releasing yourself of unhelpful thoughts and that sort of thing. So having some kind of system and ways that we support ourselves and
Mm.
resource ourselves. And then the next step's about, but not only doing it on our own, so what sort of community and support can we draw on for that healing, which, I mean, I've developed a body of work called the Women's Wellness Circle, which is all about gathering women
Yeah,
together to
beautiful.
support each other to heal, and to inspire each other, and to feel held in a container of other women that are on a similar journey, and the power of healing community. And I know that you harness that in your work with your incredible Facebook group as well. So yeah, the power of community and feeling kind of resource, not on our own, not feeling isolated, it's just
Mm.
so important. And I think it's important for women and men, but there's something about as well women, when they experience stress, have a slightly different response to stress, and much stress research have been done on men rather than on women, whereas women release a lot more oxytocin into their system when they're stressed, as a way of encouraging them to sort of reach out to each other, and to nurture the young as well. So there's something around that sort of power for women
Interesting.
particularly.
Yeah.
And then looking at overcoming blocks to healing. So step 5 is all
Mm.
about sort of the blocks to healing, our unconscious blocks. There can be protector parts of us that think that maybe we need the illness to protect us from someone or from the world, because the world's a dangerous place, and those sort of things. But I also talk in the block section about the sort of personality traits that can evolve as a result of early trauma or early conditioning. Like a lot of people who develop chronic fatigue, for example, have been very strong, like achievers in their life, but maybe very
Mm.
focused on external success and achievement, and then driven themselves into symptoms, or like very focused on helping others or pleasing others, and those sort of habits, and maybe avoiding conflict at all costs. So those sort of blocks, how do we overcome those sort of blocks as well? And then And then we look at the power of developing a purpose to be well. A purpose often has to be something bigger than yourself, something that you want to step into as you get well. And I also talk about authenticity in this chapter as well, like the power of becoming more your authentic self in the world and in your relationships and that kind of thing. And then the power of healing your past. And I think for that step, it's interesting because a lot of the people I work with might not be that resourced to do deep trauma work initially because their systems are so ill. Like, it's like, that's why I've put that a bit later, so that they've done some of that work to prepare almost for the sort of deeper healing trauma work, which can be also quite tiring as well. And like, you know, if they've not got much energy or resources to really face that sort of stuff, so it's like building up to that. I mean, for me, healing the past and healing trauma continued after I got well. Like, it's like I just had to take enough of the load off, enough of the stress off for my system to be well. But the last 12 years I've carried on doing my trauma healing work, you know, so that's continued. But I also talk about things like ancestral trauma as well, you know, which I find a lot of people hold on ancestral trauma and different pieces around that, and attachment issues and different things like that. And then and the final step's about sustaining our health. So what sort of steps help us to sustain what we've achieved? Because I do see this quite a bit, where people get a lot better and then they just go maybe back into a really busy life, or try and get the job that they used to have, something similar, and recreate the life that almost created the illness, and then get ill again, you know. So how do you make sure you really stay on the right path that's going to support you in sustaining that health as well? So yeah.
Man, so, you know, you are speaking my language here because, yeah, I love process. I love steps. And I totally hear you that, like, sometimes you wiggle around in this, and it's not necessarily like boom, 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 one is done and then on to the next. You might come back and revisit some pieces. But what I also really love about the structure that you're developing is it is supporting those who have experienced trauma in addressing the impact of that abuse and trauma on their system. And then when they have a little more resilience, a little more health, a little more strategy and capacity for system regulation, they can go into looking at the trauma. And this is something that I model in my program as well. And I think it's really, I love it when I hear other people working this way. I'm like, yay, confirmation. Because, you know, we need to give people those foundations, and before we stress their system more and taking them into trauma. And so I really want to highlight this for those of you who are listening, because when you're out there and you're advocating for yourself and you're looking for resources to help you in healing, be mindful about asking these sorts of questions of whoever your helper is going to be, whether it be a therapist or a coach, whatever. What is the process that you're going to use here with me? What are we going to be doing? And, you know, sometimes there are places where we just need to land and just talk about, and we don't need process, we don't need steps, we don't need tools. And that's okay if you're at that place in your journey. But if you're feeling like you're past that part and you're more looking at, what do I do about this? How do I resolve these symptoms? Then you want to find people who understand at this level kind of the order of operations of what needs to happen. I want to go back to the piece about community. And highlight that a little bit more, because I think this is one of the easiest ways that we end up staying stuck in our trauma and stuck in our illness is I'm the only one. This is only happening to me. Nobody else is going through this. And I find it so fascinating that even in a world where we can be connected to thousands of people in like a second, we still find this way as human beings to run this story on ourselves, that we're the only ones and we're alone in this. So let's talk a little bit about, you know, not just getting into community and the importance of being in community, but the resistance to that. And what do you notice in your clients helps them get past the story of I'm the only one, this is just me, and that place of resisting even reaching out to step into community? What do you notice about that, Frances?
Yeah, I noticed that some people do have resistance to the process of stepping into community for different reasons. But that you know, that it is so powerful once they do actually do that and explore that. I mean, recognizing that we are social beings, and we work often best when we're in community. That's how we thrive. That's how we're naturally sort of wired to be. It's more in community. I think modern society does isolate some people more than ideally would be healthy. So really cultivating a sense of community locally and also online it can be really helpful. And obviously for many people who have chronic illnesses, they maybe can't leave the home. So actually that online supportive community can be a lifeline while they're getting their health strong enough to be able to develop more sort of in-person community as well. And I have had like people that have been very resistant to joining a group, but then once they sort of explore it and try it, they realize how much they get from it and how much they receive from that and how much they also want to give back to that sort of community as well. So yeah, I don't know if that kind of speaks to what you were talking about, but yeah.
Yeah, I think first of all, just recognizing where your resistance is. It can
Yeah.
be, stories like I don't belong or I don't fit
Yeah.
in. Nobody's going to understand me anyway. I think these are kind of common
Yeah.
beliefs that people who've experienced trauma have. And then
Yeah.
there's just the straight up fear of being vulnerable, right? And I've
Yeah.
trusted people in the past. I've shared my story with people in the past and it hasn't gone well and some things happen.
Yeah.
And so it really is this dance of recognizing and acknowledging that, yeah, you've had those experiences. They're real. We're not discounting them. And also being open to the possibility and the opportunity that not all communities are like that or not all people are like that. So you don't
Yes.
miss out, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so feeling safe, finding a community that you feel really safe to be yourself and to be vulnerable as well. And I have had some people resisting community because they're scared they're going to be affected by other people's stories, and
Yeah, that's a big one.
that's going to have an impact. So I think, for instance, we've spent a lot of time really thinking about the group guidelines for our Women's Wellness Circle community Facebook group, and like really sort of making sure the guidelines help to keep as many people as possible feeling safe, but also able to share authentically and getting that right balance that's not sort of people aren't triggering each other all over the place as well, and that sort of thing. So I'm thinking through all those things really well. So it's a really safe but also constructive environment for healing, a really healing environment.
Yeah, it's so important, folks. I know I'm sure if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you've heard me say it more times than once, that we have to find ways to connect with each other. We cannot heal in isolation. And so Frances is going to share with us a little bit more about some of the communities she's created if you're dealing with chronic illness that you can come and connect with. And I'll also speak a little bit to some of the communities I have, so that at the end of this podcast, you have at least that step. If nothing else, you can start to connect into some community. Frances, the other thing that I really love about the work that you do that really resonates with me is that you're not all theory. It's not about nice ideas. It really is about going from understanding what's happening and why you're experiencing chronic illness as a result of chronic stress and activation of the amygdala and all of these things. But that then, you give your clients actual tools for healing. And I'd love for you to maybe pick one or two of your favorites and share those with us
Right.
today.
And
Yeah.
actually do a little practice or just share a little bit about them, you mean?
Either way, if you want to lead
Okay.
people through like a little something that they can do right here while they're listening, a little meditation or reflection or exercise, yeah, let's do it. If you want to talk more kind of broadly, either way.
Sure. Well, one of the practices we often talk about as foundation to the Women's Wellness Circle is something we call the oxytocin rinse or self-massage practice. So the power, if we're making contact with our bodies, we can initiate a flush of oxytocin, which can help to soothe our systems, and it's the hormone of love and connection, and can be very beneficial. So we invite women to sort of massage the crown of their heads, and
Okay, we'll do it. I need some
different kind of
oxytocin this morning. That feels
yeah.
good. All right.
Maybe like stretch out your forehead,
Yeah.
massage
Oh, yeah.
temples,
Oh,
jaws,
really. Ooh. Yeah.
and into the sort of shoulders and then down the arms. And then we also do include the breasts as well and the chest area. And if men are listening to,
Yeah, get in
and
there,
actually that's
ladies. That's good.
really
Know your body,
stressing.
love your body.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
oxytocin releasing, and then around the belly, and making some
Yeah.
contact with the kidneys as well, like rubbing the kidneys can be really
Yeah.
soothing for the system. So that's one of the sort of foundational practices we often do at the start of any coaching calls and that kind of thing we do. But we also introduce emotional freedom technique, or EFT, which is
Sure.
tapping on acupuncture points. I'm sure many of you have experienced or know about that, and that can be incredibly powerful. And we can work through sort of layers of emotion and belief and fears and thoughts, and trauma ultimately as well, to help sort of clear that out of our energy systems and calm our amygdala around different things. And it's really
Mm. Yeah,
powerful.
beautiful. Let's go back to the self-massage for just a moment.
Yeah.
So for some of you, when you're doing this self-massage practice, you might start to notice activation. So
Mm.
for a lot of survivors of abuse, you become detached from your body, right?
Mm, mm, mm.
And so this sort of self-touch can be very soothing, but it could also
Mm.
be activating because you're used to kind of being self and then body as these two separate,
Yeah. Yeah.
entities. And so, starting with your kind of head, or even
Mm.
just zones or areas that are, we'll call them safe zones, if you will,
Yeah.
places that don't hold a lot of body memory or trigger,
Mm.
and starting there to just begin that capacity. I know, when I started this practice of getting to know my body and feeling
Mm.
comfortable in my body,
Mm.
I really, it was like my hands and my feet. That's just where I went, hands and feet, and
Mm.
that was it. um and then that progressively evolved. But if you start to notice that you're getting activated, what would you recommend for people? Do they just stop, or do they stay with it for another little moment and then stop? What's your recommendation
Yeah,
in
I
those?
would just say, I mean, just go with what you feel safe with for now, and in terms of massaging and touching your own body. What really helps you to feel safe. Is giving yourself a hug enough? Is it, like you said, is it just your head and massaging your feet? Clearly going with what you're comfortable with at the moment, and then gradually working up to feeling safer, safer and safer in your body, and with touch and coming into your body more and more. Yeah, and I mean, I guess it's a safe way to start with touch, is to just is holding and touching and massaging yourself, and then clearly you can build up gradually to being safe to be massaged by someone else potentially as well. And that sort of thing,
Mm-hmm.
it can be a powerful healing, but also, yeah, has to be at the right pace for the person. And
Yeah,
yeah.
beautiful. So life is very different for you these days, and you're up to some really amazing things. You're coaching and you're working one-on-one, and you're running workshops and online groups and all of these fabulous things now that you have gained your health. And I love that last piece that you talked about as well, sustaining.
Mm,
And that's something I talk with my clients a lot about, because the Beyond Surviving program ultimately is about a lifestyle to keep the brain and the nervous system healthy. It's just like
mm,
any other part of our body, like our
mm,
digestive tract or our muscles. We
mm,
have to continue to do things, to
mm,
exercise those
mm,
parts of our bodies. And so when it comes to keeping ourselves mentally, emotionally healthy,
mm,
it's not I would say that it stops being so much effort, like, right, it doesn't take as much, like, you're not as consciously like having to like really think about it, and it starts to just become a part of your process and your daily
mm.
routines, and
Yeah.
what you do to keep yourself healthy and well. And so you have mastered that and are doing that in many, many ways, and that's what's really creating this space for you to be
Mm,
able to pass on
mm,
what you've learned. And I
mm,
want to really highlight for that for all of you who are listening, because that's another powerful piece of Frances's process, which is purpose.
mm.
Ooh, and clearly you found your purpose
Yeah,
in
I
this,
mean, I used to visualize myself doing the work I do today, when I
right?
was really sick. So yeah, it's
Right.
awesome.
Isn't that something? I mean, same here. When we're in the pain of our experience, we very seldom can see like what it can actually become. But we
Mm,
have that opportunity as we tackle, the trauma, as we tackle the illness.
mm.
And so, can you talk a little bit about how people can connect with you and the opportunities they have for jumping into your community and getting support?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, you can find out more about my work at francesgoodall.com, and that's FRANCES and then GOODALL, francesgoodall.com, and also womenswellnesscircle.com. That's womenswellnesscircle.com. Yeah, so I offer one-to-one sessions, and I also offer small group coaching for women, and also a Women's Wellness Circle community group, which is sort of a larger group. And I've also got an upcoming EFT for healing chronic illness course, which runs from the 27th of Feb to the 28th of Feb to the 28th of March 2019. So if you want to find out more about that, then email joanne@womenswellnesscircle.com. That's joanne@womenswellnesscircle.com. And yeah, it's an absolute joy to do the work I do today from the journey that I've had, and I'm still really inspired and love what I do. Yeah, and we the Women's Wellness Circle also hold a yearly event where we interview some experts of feminine sort of healing, awakening, empowerment, and that sort of thing as well. And that will be in May this year.
Oh, nice.
So, yeah.
Okay. Fantastic. Okay, so folks, I'll put all of those links in the show notes, so you can be sure to connect with Frances at the womenswellnesscircle.com or francesgoodall.com, and be sure to reach out about this EFT course that's coming up in February, March as well. Frances, any final words for our listeners today?
Oh, just to really reassure you that, you know, so much is possible in terms of healing yourself. And actually, I think when you've been through some kind of trauma, often you end up being ultimately happier and more awake than you would be otherwise. And it's a difficult journey, but it can bring many rewards. So yeah.
Yeah, cheers to that. I love
Yeah.
that. Thank you. It's been such a joy to connect with you today and have you on as my guest. I just really appreciate you and the work that you're doing out in the world. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Rachel. I appreciate your work too. Thank you.
And thank you, everybody, for tuning in and joining us today. Don't forget to visit rachelgrantcoaching.com to learn more about sexual abuse recovery coaching and explore the resources available on the site, including the link to my monthly support group, Adult Survivors of Child Abuse. You can find that in the resources section, and that's another great place to connect in and join community. And please be sure to subscribe to this podcast and leave us a note if you like what you're hearing, and come back next time, because we have so much more to share. Until then, take good care of you.